Good evening, everybody. My name's Kaz Richards, and I lived in Clissold House from 1986 to 1999. So I'm here tonight to talk about that experience. But before I do, a quick bit about myself. As I said, my name's Kaz, and I worked for the London Borough of Hackney for 23 years. And 13 of those years, I lived in Clissold House, which was great. I had many jobs during that time. I started in 1978 as a gardener and zookeeper, and a few years after that I moved on to be Nature Conservation Officer for Hackney Council and sort of took on more of an environmental education role. A few years after that I progressed up the corporate ladder and became Neighbourhood Park Manager for Stamford Hill. So not only was I living in Clissold Park, I got to actually be based at Springfield Park in Springfield House, which was also fabulous. I left London Borough of Hackney in 2001. My husband at the time got a job with the Corporation of London, so we lived on Hampstead Heath, so from one lovely green space to another. I'm currently living in Dorset in Weymouth on the south coast, which is fantastic. I still miss my London fixes, but my son lives in London, so I do come up quite regularly, and we go and visit Clissold Park, which is fantastic, and sort of relive some of the old memories. So how did I end up living in Clissold Park? Well, it was simple really. Like I said, started in 1978 as assistant gardener and zookeeper, and I'd heard on the grapevine that there was a flat available in the mansion. Obviously, as a gardener in the park, we knew about the mansion, we worked around it and did lots of gardening and occasionally had to go inside. So I was aware of the space, and I always loved it because I love old buildings. Anyway, I'd heard about the flat and thought, well, how do I apply for this? So got my act together, put in a letter of application. Had an interview, and I knew there was a little bit of stiff competition from other members of staff, but fortunately I was offered the flat. So I said, yes, please. It was not bad for £15 a week. It wasn't actually rent, it was all done on a license agreement. So I had to sign that, and basically for £15 a week for 13 years, I lived in this amazing mansion. One of the reasons I got the flat was because I was working in the zoo. So I was actually there for a bit of nighttime security as well. So that was kind of all right. It was just myself and my son for the first few years. It was a great space and a great place to live. And, you know, we had a whale of a time. It was on the first floor of the house. So we had to go all up that lovely spiral staircase to get there, which was wonderful. Not so good actually when you're dragging up loads of bags of shopping, but still not bad. It was a 2-bedroom flat then, and Amir has sorted out some fabulous slides for me this evening. But one of the nice ones is it's a shot of my former flat as it looks today. So if you can think about that as the flat which used to look over the animal enclosure, those walls were divided. So there was a sitting room and 2 bedrooms, and following on there was kitchen and bathroom. But the front of the flat, the portico overlooked the animal enclosure. So I could get on and live there and bring up my son, also keeping an eye on the animals, which was great. Right, we're just moving on now to another slide, which is a lovely, great internal photograph of the staircase. And for those of you who haven't been inside the mansion, it really is a treat. I mean, that picture is fantastic because it's got it's opened up spaces that when I lived there were it was a wall there, so you never could sort of see through it. But that staircase is amazing. Like I said to you before, it's great if you haven't got to tramps up and down with shopping or children's bikes or whatever else my son decided that he wanted to drag upstairs and drag downstairs. But there was a time when I thought it'd be nice if James could play the piano. So I bought a second-hand piano. Thought that was a brilliant idea. Not such a brilliant idea when you've got to take to get it up all those stairs, and without my colleagues in the Parks Patrol, as it was called then, we would never have done it. So it took us 2 days to get that piano all the way up those stairs. We did it in bits, but we finally managed it. Sadly, I have to report that my son never really took the piano up, but it was a nice try. It was lovely to have a piano in the flat. Just moving on there to look at an external shot of the mansion and the mansion lawn. You'll see it's the sort of back side of the mansion, as it were. When I first started as a gardener, that ground floor space was used as shower rooms. So when the guys and girls had finished playing football, they'd all rush over to the mansion, and there'd be the girls' changing rooms and boys' changing rooms. So it was always on Sunday morning, there was that sort of everyone clonking around in the bottom of it all with mud on their football boots, and also that smell of white horse oil. So those of a certain age will probably know what I'm talking about. But it sort of brings back memories, and looking at these photos now sort of sparks all different sorts of emotions and feelings. There's a slide of a wedding. So we were opposite St Mary's Church. So the Rose Lawn was the setting for many a wedding, which is always nice to have a look at. One of the things that people always used to find a bit odd was when I said I lived in the park, well, they'd look at me and they say, well, how do you get in and out? Well, obviously I had a key to the gate, but I think people kind of forgot that. So once we overcame all that, that's fine. But yes, we did have a key to the gate. So I used to come in and go out after the park patrol, or park keepers as they're now called, locked up. If at some point I didn't ever have a key, and I think I was very rarely without mine, on the Queen Elizabeth walk side going up to the town hall, traditionally a couple of the railings were bent, so just big enough to get in and out should you not have your key to get in. So that was always a handy little shortcut. The mansion always had a great feeling, and my son and I were never scared about living there. No nasty ghosts, no horrible things, just sort of history of lots and lots of people. And it always makes me smile when I look at that that postcard of the park and the day it opened back in the 1880s. And when you think sort of just over 100 or so years ago, all those people were in and out of my flat. So it's almost like the ghost of the past. So that's sort of quite a nice sort of memory to take away. I love that portico as well. Although we could have access onto it, very rarely did, because you're in public view. And although I've always worked with the public, quite a private person really, so I used to like my privacy. But it was nice to sort of throw open the windows on a nice sunny day and just take in the rays really. Of course, living in the mansion, we were living above a cafe. When I first moved in, it was just about ready to close. The previous tenant was getting ready to move out. So there was a bit of fallow period where there was no one in there. And then Christine Jackson was offered the tenancy and moved into the cafe, cleared all the previous tenants' stuff out, and kind of made it into what it is today really. I mean, she kind of started that whole cafe society thing in Clissold Park. And it suddenly became a very trendy place to go and have a cup of coffee. I think we call them yummy mummies now. But it was a great place for kids to go after school to get a really cool and funky range of ice creams and ice lollies from the cafe that Christine used to stock, natural fruit lollies and stuff, which probably didn't have before. But there's nothing wrong with the odd Zoom or the odd Nibby, of course. And then, of course, the cafe was serving really good coffee and fantastic carrot cake. So the whole place was really known for its coffee and carrot cake. And as you can see, it was a great place to meet after school, to meet your friends, have a cup of coffee, just watch the world go by. Christine used to have a great staff team there. A lot of them were resting actors or actresses, so you could be sure that when you went in there for your cup of coffee or your Sunday lunch or your breakfast or whatever it was, there'd be someone singing, someone being very theatrical, and just making you feel really, really welcome. So I loved all of that. And also because Christine had a sort of broad range of friends, sort of theatrical, non-theatrical, just really interesting people. There was always a fantastic vibe going on, in something really good going on in the cafe. She used to host exhibitions, with Clissold School. We had an art exhibition there once, which was really great, so the kids could sort of come along and show their art like a professional sort of private view. And then we also had a softball team, which I was really lucky to get involved with. And so the cafe staff and a few of us park staff would don the baseball gloves or the softball gloves and go out in the park and play softball against these various catering teams. So it was great fun. So it was just nice to actually, come home from work and sort of chill out, go down, see what's happening in the cafe, and then play a game of softball. And actually, we got really quite good at it, and won quite a lot of tournaments, which was also good. And the post-match food was just divine, as you can imagine. There were one or two downsides of living in a cafe. There were, on occasion, a few break-ins, which wasn't brilliant. And it always used to, you get used to the noises in the mansion, and when you're sort of tucked up in bed and just, chilling and trying to go to sleep, and then suddenly in the middle of the night you hear these great bangs coming from below. It took me a while to work out what it was, and then you realise someone's trying to break in. So you do what you have to do, protect your son first of all, and then phone the police, and then phone Christine to get her out, and because obviously with her cafe she wanted to make sure everything was okay as it could be. Interestingly, when I did phone the police, on more than one occasion they kept saying, well, yes, we're here outside the gate, could you come and let us in? Well, no, I'm not going to suddenly go out into the mansion if there's an intruder. So we had some really interesting conversations over the phone. And one night, I think there were some big repairs going on to the mansion, and there was some scaffolding at the front. And someone had climbed up the scaffolding, and there was a helicopter sort of buzzing around. When the floodlights were sort of interfilling in the flat, and my son and I were sort of cowering in the back bedroom. And sort of people hanging off the scaffolding. Thank God the police arrived and dealt with that. But there have been some very hairy moments from time to time. So yeah, living in the mansion, fabulous. But yeah, I'd like to think I played my part in sort of helping to preserve it. So it is the fabulous place it is today. It's everything I kind of hoped it would be. All those visits from the park user group who wanted, sort of interested to see what the living spaces were like. Just to sort of see how a lottery bid could be put together to restore the mansion to its former glory, because it was sort of knocked about a bit here and there. Obviously, with the gardeners using a bothy downstairs and the park patrol having an office there, it did need some TLC. But like I say, I like to think I had a bit of a hand in sort of helping that mansion be in a position where it was still there, not burnt down, and enabled to sort of be the lush place that it is today, and enjoyed by many more who can use it as function rooms and marriage rooms and so much more besides. So I'm really pleased to see it like that. It fills my heart with joy. Living in the park was really good on so many levels. When I first started as a gardener, one of my first jobs actually was working in the greenhouse. And for some of you who know or may not know, the Queen Elizabeth, no, not the Green Lanes entrance actually, where you would still sort of walk past Mr. O'Boyle's lodge and then go down into the depot side. There used to be two big old greenhouses down there. So when I first started back in 1978, we used to grow all the bedding plants for the park, so our spring and summer bedding and autumn bedding. So I learnt my skills there, pricking out and growing all the flowers and then planting that in the park. So that was a really good training for me, and I learnt a huge amount from the guys and girls there. When I got there in 1978, we just sort of got transferred across from the old GLC system, so going back into the Hackney and the London Borough of Hackney Parks service. And there was still sort of a couple of the park keepers from the old GLC days, and Tom Kilcullen was one of them, a sort of huge Irishman, and George Houlihan, and they used to sort of walk around in long brown coats and brown hats, frightening the life out of children for riding their bikes where they shouldn't be. So it was great to sort of hear all their old stories too. But it was also great to work with the park user group, and it was nice to be involved in the committees and contribute to the meetings and sort of work with them on trying to get all the lottery bid stuff. So that was allowing them access to the mansion and on the roof as well, because the flat had access to the roof, which was another bonus. Once again, not bad for £15 a week. Towards the end of my tenure at the mansion, actually, we had a beehive, on the roof, and we used to, well, the beekeeper used to make Stamford Hill honey, which was sold in the cafe, and was very much liked by the current mayor at the time, Councillor Lobenstein. There were a lot of events and festivals in Clissold Park over the years, many during my time, many after my time. But back in the day, in the sort of mid to late 70s, the Parks Department used to have what was called the Hackney Show. It used to be held in Clissold Park, or in fact it was called the Stoke Newington Show then. And then it moved over to Hackney Down. So there are a few slides coming up that will show you the park service tent. So it was very sort of quite old-fashioned in many ways, with where the parks team put together ornamental displays in the tent. And I did environmental education displays, because during the 80s and 90s, we took a decision really to make the animal enclosure a little bit more animal friendly by creating more habitats. So it kind of went from being a sort of Victorian animal enclosure with just so it looked beautiful, but it really wasn't that beautiful for the animals because they had very few places to hide and very few sort of habitats. So it's important to rough it up a bit in the name of nature, which we did. So the deer could have privacy while they gave birth, and the waterfowl had places to nest and bring up their young, which was great to see. One of the jobs I had was nature conservation officer. And while I moved on from my gardening and direct work in the animal enclosure, we took the decision, because as years went on, things change, people's attitudes change, and people wanted different things out of their park experience. So the old rabbit pen just next to the aviary we had a lot of vandalism, and people were pulling up the fences, and foxes used to get in and kill the rabbits, and it really wasn't a happy time for the park. So we decided, what about turning it over as a nature garden? So one of my colleagues in the gardening service put a butterfly tunnel into the old rabbit pen, which was hugely popular with the schools and also other visitors, because it was open to the public, because it never could be with animals in there. And we also turned over a bit of that animal enclosure to growing communities. So I built up a nice relationship with Julie Brown, and I believe that growing communities still operate and grow their fabulous fruit and veg there, and have farmers markets in the park, which is great. I'm very pleased again to have had a little hand in sort of shaping that. One of the benefits of living in the park was I was there 24/7, and I wanted to have somewhere for the public to go to enhance their experience of the park. So at the side of the mansion, just below the cafe, opposite the rose garden, there was a little room. It was underneath a canopy, and it was my nature room. And there's a lovely, sweet little slide coming up of the leaflet that we had designed, sort of offering walks and talks and access to this little nature room where I used to collect the antlers from the fallow deer, peacock feathers, various other sort of owl pellets and things that would be of interest to children and visitors, and do a bit of storytelling with the kids as well. So that was a great addition and enhancement, I thought, at the time. We were sort of ahead of the game, really. And it's nice to see that there was a nature conservation and education ranger in the park. I'm really pleased that's still continued. And these last few slides, especially the one of the mansion at night time, it was actually a lovely feeling when everyone had gone home and you know the gates had been shut and you just had your dinner, and you would sort of sit there and watch a bit of television and settle in for the night. And sometimes if it was a summer evening, and my son and I would go out and just sort of check on the animals, see if they were okay, and have a walk around the park, and it felt like it was ours because we were all alone. Obviously, there were many people that used to cut through and dip in and out of various things, but we always felt safe. And it was just a lovely moment. And now looking at that lovely slide of the sunset in the park, it just brings back so many happy memories, and all those fantastic veteran trees, you know, the swathes of crocuses when they all come out in bloom, and the daffodils up in green lanes. So many fantastic memories. But during those 13 years I lived there, it felt like it belonged to me. And my son, who is now 37, so that was a long lifetime ago, really. But we still love coming back to have a look. Often we'll come along and bump into old friends, and there are a couple of park staff, I think, who are still there when I was there. So it's always nice to catch up with them and talk about old times and some of the films that were made in the park. There was High Hopes was filmed there, bits of it. So some of us had parts as extras. And it's all little bits like that that make Clissold very special. Although I'm not involved in parks in my current job, which is coordinator of Dorset Food and Drink, I am still a green flag judge. So I do get to go to visit lots of parks here in the southwest. I haven't judged London parks again, but it's something I think after COVID, I think I would like to go back to, because it would be nice to come back and have a look at some of the parks that I've visited, worked in, and Clissold Park, which I of course love living in. It's been lovely to talk about this with you guys tonight, and thank you very much to Amir for inviting me to do this. Perhaps once COVID is out the way, I can bring you more stories of park life in the future, and hopefully we can do it in person. But until then, if you have any questions, please do ask. I'll be happy to help.